RotoGrinders. Welcome to DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, Blender HD if you want to follow me there on Twitter. And this is the show where we'll look at the results CB from yesterday. It was a small slate, 5-game slate last night. I'm glad to have gotten most of my money back. Right, didn't lose that much. Maybe we'll touch on today's slate, although it's a 15-game slate, and it's what, 36 hours before 24 hours before the trading deadline. Who knows what's going to happen? Or people are already moving, right? Rizzo's now on the Yankees, Gallo's on the Yankees. It seems like they just realized that their right field porch is pretty short, right? Finally, maybe we get some power lefties in our lineup. There are also tons of strikeouts in that lineup as well. We got Scherzer going to the Dodgers. Scherzer and Trey Turner going to the Dodgers, right? We got tons of stuff going on. So who knows who's going to move next? I mean, I think Trevor Story. We got some Rockies. Who knows? You'll find out throughout the day. You'll see someone scratched from the lineup, and who knows? It could be because of a trade or something, right? It doesn't have to be a star player. It could be like some role player that's involved in a trade, right? So you don't know. So keep in touch with that for the rest of the day. But it's Casual Friday, which means we'll talk about casual questions. I also want to go over, we'll do that later, a little bit later, the MMA card. Big edge. There's big edge in MMA this week. So if you want to play MMA, UFC tomorrow, big edge, right? I'm teasing it. This is called in the business. This is called the teaser, right? Tease it for later. What's the big edge? I'll hit on that later, right? If it was that important, I'd bring it up immediately. It's kind of like, you see the local news ads. It's like, oh, the thing that you've been eating all your life may be unhealthy for you. News at 11. It's like, why don't you tell me now? It's like that's like 5 hours from now. Maybe I'd be eating it by the time the show comes on. So like, I don't know why you're teasing that. So whatever. It's a similar type of thing. But it's Casual Friday. Casual questions. Ask anything you want in the YouTube chat. I don't care. Doesn't matter. I see you guys in there. Give me those thumbs early in the morning. Real life pitchers: Shannon Lambert, Suki Singh, Doug Montgomery, Chris Schumacher, Sterling Woods, Card Fan, Jerome Lewis, Brian C., Dwayne Bones, Lee Palm, right? Just body parts, right? We got bones. We got a palm. We got a real life pitcher. We do. Woods. Well, Woods could be a body part, right? PG show. I'm not going to talk about that. But what happened yesterday? Yesterday, Musgrove got his mojo back, right? I Musgrove in 100% of my lineups. I only played 10 lineups yesterday, but he was in all of them. And I mostly Musgrove, Peralta, or Musgrove, Cool, because the Brewers were kind of chalky, and Cool projected, I mean, at least somewhat decently. Casey Mize did well, I mean, but he ended up pitching 7 innings. I didn't expect that. I think I had him in 1 out of my 10. And I faded Montes, and I played Angels against him. Because at 36% owned over here, if I was going to attack any of these pitchers, like the Rockies didn't project all that well against Musgrove. The Pirates definitely didn't project well against Peralta. And Montes actually projected much lower in the bat compared to other pitchers. The Angels were okay. I mean, it's a 5-game slate. You only have 10 teams to choose from. So I decided to play a lot of Oakland. I played a lot of Oakland Los Angels that game. So I played some Brewers, who were the winning stack. Some Brewers, some A's, Angels, and Orioles, and barely any of the Tigers. And you didn't get anywhere with the Tigers. The Tigers scored runs, but they didn't do enough. Miggy was the key. But first base, you could have Tellis at 28 points, right? You could have had Guerrero, Vlad at 25. I mean, yeah, Miggy had 33, but he wasn't required to be in the winning lineup. Because on at least on DraftKings, on FanDuel, you could have 2 first basemen, so then you have to worry about that. But if you could see, sharper players didn't. I mean, the Tigers were the over-owned team of the day. Haas 33% owned, Grossman with a 0, 27% owned, Scope 21, Badu 18, right? So it was the Tigers. Then we had obviously Tatis and Machado, the Padres, but like the other Padres weren't as owned. I mean, yeah, the stack was owned. I mean, like I said, there's only 10 teams to choose from. And then we had the Brewers. So that's why I was more on like here, Matt Olson, 16%. We can see here, Ricky D went heavy. I mean, Ricky D doesn't diversify. He just like, I'm taking the best shot and going with as many lineups as possible. He slammed the Oakland A's yesterday, but I seem to be more on the same page with some of the sharpest players in the lobby, right? I had a lot of Otani, right, against Montes, right? I think he was underowned for a 5-game slate at 16%, right? We see Nerdy Tenor, Brick 75, Royal Pain, Bro Flex. Yeah, Ricky D didn't have much. He didn't have much of, well, he had 30% Montes. Okay, so that's a decent amount. But most people had tons of Musgrove. Tons of Musgrove. And like the Pirates, Rodolfo Castro was 13% owned for some reason. Okay, whatever. You can see here Lowry, 13%. And obviously we had the Toronto-Boston game, which it wasn't going to play. Is there going to be a rain delay? So I think both sides of that game were underowned. It turns out that the Red Sox side of the game was much more underowned than the Blue Jays side. And I played Red Sox. That didn't work out. My Hunter Renfroe 0 didn't do much in a lot of lineups, right? My Bogart 0, right? You can see, look across the board. I mean, Boston Red Sox, we see them here. Look at the A's, Sean Murphy. Almost everyone is over. I mean, obviously Ricky D has a ton. We just scroll down here, but you can see like Semien, the Blue Jays, a mix. Manny Pena, obviously, you needed a catcher. He had double dong for the Brewers, right? If you stack the Brewers, you need to have Pena. It didn't do anything for you, right? Pena has 37. Avisel Garcia 0, right? I had Brewers stacks, but they all had Avi. They all had Avisel Garcia in it. This is why I was able to get most of my money back, but didn't win anything, right? I think I was minus 17% or something last night, which I was happy with the way everything went, right? Right, having half my lineups be A's, and then another third being Angels, and then still only losing like 17%. I'm fine, whatever. Move on to the next day. Orioles were no, the Orioles were. I mean, I'm looking down on a 5-game slate. You're looking down and seeing single-digit owned players, right? Ramon Laureano, guys like that. Canha 7%. Like these A's were underowned, facing Dylan Bundy in the Angels bullpen. Although Quintana came out of the bullpen and struck out like half the 2 innings. I think 2 innings, 5 strikeouts or something. Quintana is either really good sometimes or awful. I was hoping for the awful one, but we didn't get it. Let's scrolling down here. Right, Phil Goslin for the Angels. Like the Angels were underowned. Brandon Marsh at 2,100. I mean, yeah, they didn't do anything. Sure, Montes had a great 7 innings, 10 strikeouts. So obviously those lineups are dead. It's a 5-game slate. So I mean, what is there to review, really? What is there to review? I know what you guys did. Feel free to post in the YouTube chat. It's Casual Friday. A little mini review there for a 5-game slate. Today is Lance Lynn and Burns are up top at pitcher. As of right now in the bat, Lynn and Tyon are like the optimal combination. But we got some cheap guys here. Gilbert, Skubal. I don't know about Allard or LeBlanc. I don't know what the upside is with them, but I guess when Matt Harvey projects for 2.23 a point per dollar against the Tigers, you're probably not playing him. But I mean, it's kind of like it's the immovable force and the whatever, the inanimate object, whatever they call it, whatever that phrase is. Because it's the Tigers, so the Tigers aren't the greatest hitting teams, and they strike out a lot. So either Harvey's going to have a good game or the Tigers are going to destroy him. It's going to be one of the two, right? Are any of these pitchers expected to be traded? Is John Gray, is he going to be traded from the Rockies? I don't know. Maybe we end up getting a scratch pitcher today. So looking at the pitchers, it's like, okay, Lance Lynn against Cleveland. We don't have any ownership in. Maybe if I refresh it, maybe we have early. I don't even know if it's going to matter this early. Let's see. No, we got nothing. We got nothing. So what we got hitter wise? Hitter wise, any cheapos? Yeah, we got a ton of kind of cheap bats you could fit in. Got the Pirates at the Phillies. They ain't a ballpark upgrade against Velasquez. Bowie's going to be cheap. Yeah, Lester, the Cubs against Lester at Washington. Right? That's probably a good spot. Still got the Brewers against Atlanta in Atlanta. Against Tuki Toussaint. Maybe the Royals against Stripling. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the stacks page for the bat. Let's look at ceiling wise. Okay, here we go. Cubs, Brewers, Royals. Royals are here. Pirates are up there. Look. How rare is it to see the Pirates as in the top third of ceiling projections, right? Also point per dollar wise. I mean, you could see here point per dollar wise, right? Pirates, Brewers, Rangers, Marlins, but Rangers and Marlins barely have a ceiling. But they're cheap. Indians against Lance Lynn because they're cheaper, right? But the ceilings are suspect. We got the Royals, the Cubs, right? Then we have the teams that have high ceilings but very poor point per dollar value, like the Dodgers against Gallen. The Phillies against Will Crow. I mean, this is a good. I like using the bat stack projections page just to get a really good overview of the bats on the slate and the stacks, thinking in terms of lineups and not players. So, like organizing it by, even if you just sort it by ceiling, you could tell that if it's in the top 20, like if these numbers are high, that means it's a good point per dollar value. If you see like zeros, like Philadelphia, like zero, it's like it doesn't even show up in the top 1,000 stacks. It means that it's they have a high raw points, but just not great for their salaries. So it doesn't mean you don't play them. It just means that more likely they're going to be lower owned because it's hard to fit them in unless you punt twice at pitcher, or at least punt somewhere, right? Do something. I just like looking at it. So maybe the Pirates. Are the Pirates going to be owned today? I don't know. We'll see. Looking back at the YouTube chat. Irresistible force versus the immovable object. That's what I'm talking about. Right? It's funny. Two eyes, and I don't remember what they are. Let's see. Chris Schumacher. Not looking for tax advice. Good, because I'm not a tax attorney or anything. But I've heard you speak about having an LLC for fantasy sports income. I have one for real estate rental income. Can talk to you your benefits from. I don't have an LLC. I have an S corporation. I already had an S corporation before I played DFS for digital marketing. So everything that I do, everything business wise I do goes in, just gets Blenderhead Media, right? That's where Blenderhead comes from, right? Blenderhead is a Bad Religion song. So when I had to make a company name, like, I don't know, 12 years ago, it's like, okay, well, I'm from the punk scene, the punk hardcore scene. And a lot of times you name your band after like a song or an album of like your favorite band or something like that. Like you take one of their song titles. So I look through my Bad Religion collection and I'm like, okay, Blenderhead. Yeah, that sounds good. Blenderhead Media, done. So I had an S corporation. LLC is not going to do much for you because if it's a one person, it's essentially a DBA. Like I said, I'm not a tax. Don't talk to an accountant, talk to a tax person or whatever. But you get much more projection under an S corporation, and then you could pay yourself a salary. So what you'd end up doing is, as long as you're paying yourself a reasonable salary, you could run pay. You don't even have to run payroll every month. You could run it every quarter. And then kind of estimate what you think you're going to make for the whole year. So you lowball it early. So your first quarter, you pay yourself a little. Second quarter, pay yourself a little. Third quarter, pay yourself a little. And then fourth quarter, it's whatever, because that's the end, right? So you know pretty much how much you're going to make. And anything extra is just going to be on your K1. So that'll be distributed. But on your K1 income, you're not going to be paying, the company isn't paying the Medicare and Social Security. Talk to an accountant. I don't know why I should be giving you advice or whatever. But if you set up an S corporation, then and you're the employee, right? So get a W-2. You're going to have tax withholding, right? You're going to have to file a bunch of paperwork every quarter. But typically, your accountant would handle that. My accountant essentially just sends me an envelope at every quarter that has a whole bunch of like papers and already with the envelopes already stamped and everything, and a little highlighter with the yellow, and just basically I go through it, right? So like because I have to send unemployment insurance thing, I have to send this to the federal, this to the state, this to the local, like for the withdrawal, the withholding here and whatever. So it's already done for me, right? It's all filled out. I just have to pretty much sign it, and then where the yellow marker is, and then fold up the paper and put it into the envelope that is already in there, right? Because my accountant puts out all the envelopes that I need with self-addressed or whatever. And I just put it in, and it says, write a check for $478 to Kentucky Department of Revenue or something. Okay, there you go, done. Send it out, right? So if you get a good accountant, they'll pretty much do that for you. But I mean, is it worth doing all of that? It depends on how much money you're making, right? I put everything in there, so everything I do from DFS in general is in there. So not just playing, but like I'm doing these shows, and RotoGrinders pays me for this, right? Right? I do content, I sell the course. I mean, it all goes in there, and then you take off all your expenses, right? Right? So like when a UFC pay-per-view, right? I just pay for it and just write it off, right? That's part of me playing DFS, right? MLB TV subscription, write it off, right? But it's written off not on my personal taxes, it's on the company's taxes. So it's not LLC with a one-person LLC. It's just going to be pass-through income. It's not going to matter, right? You're not doing anything different. So yeah, but talk to an accountant about that. But that's what I do. That's what a lot of top players do. They have a company set up for their play. But you have to have obviously on the sites on DraftKings Fanduel, your tax ID number, it has to be the business ID number. So you're going to be using the EIN for your company, not your personal social security number, because you want the 1099 sent to your business. So the business gets the money. It spends whatever it needs to spend to generate the income, and then at the end, like you get a paycheck, and then anything that's left, you get as being obviously 100% majority owner of the top shareholder, right? The 100% shareholder of the company. Let's see. Yes. Yes, Michael Dompia. Yeah, I did have a tax episode. If you go to the Theory of DFS podcast back in early April, late March, that's like tax time. I did have an accountant on to talk about that type of stuff. And if you have an unprofitable year, you take a loss, right? You deduct it. Okay, it's just like a business that takes a loss. It's perfectly fine. How that carries over, I have no idea because I haven't experienced. Good thing I haven't experienced it, right? I have not experienced how my S corporation having a loss. So I don't know. I don't even know. Do I carry that over my personal taxes? I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't have any experience in 12 years of having a business, a legal. I mean, a business that's separate from me than other income on my taxes. I've never had a losing. Never had a negative. So I don't know. I don't know what happens. Does the world explode? I don't know. Does the universe collapse upon itself when that happens? I don't know. I don't know. Norm Bothwell, how do I get my 150 max lineups to finish across the spectrum? They typically finish in a tight spread, like 40th to 90th percentile. Even if I'm stacking every team as a 4x, can't get the wide variance. Well, 4x is, I mean, 4x, you could still end up with the same one-offs and tons of lineups, like 80% of the time. Do you want it to finish across the spectrum? I mean, we're talking about diversification here. There's nothing that says that you need to finish like that. You should, to me, you shouldn't be stacking every team. But let's say you do stack every team. If you're doing 4x and you're having one-offs, like I'm assuming we're talking about FanDuel, you still may end up with tons of similar lineups. If you're playing 4 one-offs, whoever the point per dollar, top play, you may have like 50% of them. I don't know. But if you're playing something like 4-3-1 or 4-4, as long as you have enough, unique players, it should be fairly diversified. I mean, you should be able to check. I mean, there's not a question that I can answer without looking at exactly what it is that you're doing. I mean, you'd see. I mean, you should see what it looks like. You'd see in the exposures. You'd build lineups and see, I have 80% of this guy and 60% of that guy. Well, if you have 80% of one guy and 60% of another guy, most likely you have a lot of lineups that are very contingent on those players. So if those players don't do well or whatever they do, that's where most of your lineups are going to be. Even if less than half, four out of the 10 spots in your lineup are a different stack. But I would have to take a look at exactly what you're doing or whatever. But like I said, that's for diversification. I mean, if you're building good lineups, who cares? Then you're gonna have bigger swings. So it's not a big deal if you're not diversified. I mean, we took a look at Ricky D. Ricky D plays in a completely non-diversified, but he'll have huge swing. Look, he had the A's in most of his lineups yesterday. So if the A's don't do well, he loses like 80% of his money. If the A's do well, I mean, he could take down a ton of money. That's what he chooses to do, right? Some people are more diversified than others, but there's no strategy to that. You still have to determine who you're playing and who you're not playing. You can see here from sharper players, if you played the Tigers last night, the sharps were mostly under on the Tigers, and they were over on the A's. So it didn't matter what happened yesterday, right? We know, well, the A's didn't do well. Well, who cares? You're looking to play well every day. You don't know which day it is that you're going to win a ton, but just play well. I want to play like the sharpest players in the lobby play, right? I would trade my results with a lot of these players. So that's what you have to compare it to. And some play really not diversified at all, and some play more diversified. But that's just a matter of risk tolerance. It's bankroll management. It has nothing to do with strategy. Playing non-diversified and playing horrible negative EV lineups ain't going to do anything for you. The same reason that I'm going to play 150 negative EV lineups as long as they're all diversified. It's just, okay, now you're going to lose money slower. That's all the difference. You still have to make good lineups. Michael Dompier is a tax guy in the chat. Okay, maybe he could Michael Dompier is gonna answer your tax questions in the YouTube chat. But yes, I assume that my business, if my business loses money, that'll pass down to my personal income. I'll get a negative number on a K1, and then input that. Oh, probably up to a certain amount. There's probably some cap or something. There's probably I don't know. You know how you solve that problem? Don't lose money. That's how you solve it. Don't lose money. Right? Just like how do you solve the problem with the top heavy payouts, right? Oh, it's 100,000 to first, and like set of stake knives to 7th place, right? You know how you solve it? By winning the whole thing, right? You're winning by big. You have no problem if you win first, right? Of course. Okay, I wanted to touch on. I teased it. The big edge in MMA. You're playing UFC on Saturday. I don't know why people don't play. It's such an easy DFS sport. Probably easier than golf. Like golf is easy because there's no correlation or anything. You're picking 6 golfers, and here you go, ownership and whatever, and then stuff happens. But there's also a lot of golfers. You're playing an event with 155 golfers. It's like, that's almost seems too much. UFC on Saturday is 26 fighters, and you don't play fighters against each other. So like you automatically know that. Like only one guy could win. But the edge for MMA, I set up, okay, I've shown this before. This is my cheat sheet. I make a cheat sheet for MMA. This is how I play now. I didn't used to do this. I used to kind of estimate it. I used to go by projection somewhat. So like when COVID hit, I didn't set myself up exactly like this. And my results showed. I mean, I had some really close. I had some ties, whatever. But now I've been playing way better with this cheat sheet. So what I do I've shown this before. I take all the fighters on the slate, obviously, all their salaries. Then I put in the betting lines for their win, the money line, right? The win, chances of them to win inside the distance, meaning that they win with a finish, that it doesn't go to the judges' scorecards. It win, they submission, knockout, something like that. And then round one, that the fight ends in round one. That fighter wins in round one because that scores you the most amount of points. And then compare it to ownership. Obviously, I put notes here that the main events in MMA are 5 rounds instead of 3, so that they have more opportunity to score points. And then the women's fights or heavyweight. Like heavyweight fights tend to be slow, but high variance, and women's fights tend to go to decision, but typically the strike scoring is softer. So women's fights tend to not get a finish, but some of these some strikes that in men's fights would not be considered significant are actually considered significant in women's fights. If you notice, sometimes we have some women fighters scoring 170 strikes, and they're clinching and they're doing like this type of stuff, and they actually get a lot more points in those situations than the men would. So I like marking them down just for reference. But what I like doing, we don't have the round one for Stolze and Gooden because Gooden's a replacement. So I compare, this is where these numbers come from. I'm looking to compare them against one another. So basically all I'm doing is dividing that number by the ownership. So Barberina has a 72% chance of winning and a 54% ownership. He has a 50% chance because I'm converting it, right? I put in the spreadsheet, the formula, to convert this, right? So if it's 150, that would be 40%, right? 100 would be 50%, right? Minus 150 would be 60%, right? So it's converting to a percentage. So he's a 50% chance of winning inside the distance, but he's going to be on 54% of the time, which means he's underneath, right? Divide the two numbers. Anything under 1 means he's over-owned for that, right? Round 1, you can see here. And typically the higher price fighters, the more points you're going to need from them. Right? Getting 90 points from a $9,600 guy is not going to make the optimal. The first place lineup in the large field GPP. So a lot of times these 9K fighters, I have to judge more on them winning in the first round than them winning in any round. Unless they're the type of fighter that obviously puts up a lot of points based on their fighting style. This does not include any type of fighting style whatsoever. So I put this together. This is the RG ownership, and obviously, it's Friday morning. This may change a bit. And these odds may, I checked them in the morning, right? Today. I'll update them tomorrow because they'll move a little, right? Some of the inside the distant odds will move. So the edge here is that we have a mispriced fighter. We have a grossly mispriced fighter. Okay, Stolze was supposed to take on Laze. Laze was a $9,200 fighter, and Laze would have been the favorite a decent favorite in this fight, but he had to back out. And Gooden, who's not horrible, Jared Gooden, on a week's notice, 6 days notice, he's gonna fight Stolze. So that Gooden is the underdog. They priced him at 6,800. But because once pricing comes out, DraftKings doesn't change anything. They'll add a fighter, but they won't change the price of an existing fighter. So Stolze should be like 9,000 now, because now he's the favorite. He's not going to be the 2-to-1 underdog. Now he's going to be the 2-to-1 favorite, and he's priced as a 2-to-1 underdog. So he's 7,000. So you can see here we have him projected at 64% owned. It's a $2,000 mispriced fighter. But remember, this is a 13-fight card, and you typically need to get over 100 points from your fighters, from 6 fighters. And the bigger the card, the more likely there's going to be a 600 plus or more, 630, 650, right? Which means finishes, right? You're rarely going to, unless it's unless it's one of these chain wrestler guys that could score like 40 points a round. Like most likely, you're gonna need finishes. The decisions aren't gonna be good enough. So you take a look here. Yes, he has to bet 250 inside the distance, 29% chance of finishing inside the distance, which is great in comparison to other fighters in his range, but he's going to be 64% owned. Okay? If Stolze wins in a decision and scores, let's say, 85 points, let's just say 85. He may not, even at 7,000. It's like that's a great score for 7,000. But he may not be in the optimal lineup. At say he may be a bust at 85 points, even at 7,000. The only way that his 85 points will matter for like the first place is if all these guys below him lose. So basically, if he scores like 85, and these guys, Hall, Gooden, Grutzenmacher, and Witt, they score less than 85. So even if they win and score less or whatever. And you also need these guys up top, and girls, right, and women, Montano, Barberina, Garcia, Strickland, Montano. If they score 100 plus points, right? Because the combination, because you're paying down for 7,000, you're able to fit in these high price fighters, right? 54% owns Barberina, 42% own Garcia. Strickland in the main event, 41% owned. Montano, 30% owned. The only reason these ownerships are up here is because of Stolze. Like if Stolze wasn't available, these ownerships would come down because it's hard to fit in like the best like underdogs. Like for an 7,000 for Stolze on any other slate would be a slam. I mean, it would be a slam dunk. But if you're playing small field stuff, okay, maybe still play Stolze. He'll be even more owned. Right? If you're playing the 555, he could be 80% owned in that contest. But there's 13 fights. So the edge, to me, the edge is like not playing him. Either not playing him, playing Gooden instead, because obviously that's directly like negatively correlated, or playing other, like let's say you wanted to play Barberina, these high price fighters, well, play them, but don't play them with Stolze. Play them with Yanan and Gooden or Grutzenmacher or Witt, like, because we take a look at these percentages. Like these are based on the betting lines. So just simply inside the distance, which gives you a better shot, obviously a good shot at getting 100 plus points. I mean, these guys are, most of this range. I mean, Adeshev, his fighting style is, yes, I'll get a finish 22% of the time. I don't know how well he's going to score. Some of these guys, their fighting styles are suspect, right? From a decision to put up 100 points, but a first round finish. They're all under-owned. All these guys are under-owned, except for Stolze, who's grossly over-owned. Yeah, like Witt, Grutzen, like Witt is a 31% chance to win, but he's only going to be 8% owned. If there are going to be a lot of lineups that are Barberena, Garcia, one of these two, like if one of these two, Barberina, Garcia, Strickland, we may see lineups like this. Like if I go here, let's see, just based on projections, which don't matter all that much. Right. Stolze, Strickland, Barberina, Montana. You're going to see a lot. Obviously you wouldn't play Hall in the same lineup as Strickland. So if we get rid of Hall, like we're going to see a lot of lineups like this. Okay, maybe not Gooden either, right? We wouldn't put Gooden in the same lineup. We wouldn't put Witt in the same line. Why does it keep on coming up like this? Okay, get rid of that. Here, something more like this, right? You're going to see high-priced, one of these two high-priced, Strickland. Like, these are what lineups are going to look like with Stolze in them. And people aren't going to have to go down for some of these underdogs. Like some of these other underdogs, like Anglin and Jones and Rowe, like are going to be grossly. Take a look at these ownerships. 11%, 16, 14, 8, 8, 7, 8, 11, 11. Even Yaya, 19. Adeshev, 11. This whole range is going to be just grossly underowned just by looking at the betting lines. Like I don't know anything about these guys. All I know is that Yaya has a based on the betting line, has a 32% chance of getting a finish inside the distance, winning. He's going to be 19% owned. He could put up 110 points. Rowe could put up 110. I mean, look, 27% chance, 26% chance. You play Rowe. I mean, like, there seems to be so many constructions that don't contain Stolze that have a much higher expect. Like, to me, I don't even know. Maybe there are Stolze lineups that don't even have a positive expected value. So to me, based on this information, because it's a unique slate, we don't get these types of slates all that often, where a guy is, the favorite in a fight drops out, and then the replacement guy ends up being lower, being the underdog of a fighter that is only 7,000. Now, the most probable situation is that a lineup like that, like I showed before, may win, but it'll be tied like 74 different ways. I mean, take a look at the ownership here. Imagine having a lineup of Barberina, Strickland, and Stolze. And then you kind of figure out in the middle. It's going to be duped too much. So my advice is either, depending on the lineup, if you want to play a lineup that automatically you increase the expected value of it, is just don't play Stolze. Right? So you don't play Stolze and you build your lineup. Like, you're automatically cutting out if he's going to be 64% owned. If Stolze loses, right? If he loses, you're pretty much killing 2/3 of the lineups of the contest. And if he wins and only puts up 70 points, right? Could have been decision win 70 points. You still may not. You still may be killing 2/3 of the lineups. Now, if he goes out and it wins in the first round and puts up 115 points, well, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead, right? You're dead in those scenarios. Sure. But based on this, like, if he wins inside the distance 29% of the time, that means what? 71% of the time he doesn't? But he's going to be 64% owned? I'll not play him. But if you wanted to play Stolze, let's say you're like, no, I want to play Stolze lineups. Don't play Stolze lineups with these high-priced fighters. So you're going to be playing Stolze and leaving more than 1,000 on the table. I think the plus EV lineups this week in MMA, in UFC, are lineups that leave at least 1,000 on the table. That if you just make it that 49K is your top range and build lineups, you're going to avoid tons of duplication. Because we're going to see so many lineups that if Stolze, Hall, Barberina, Garcia, something like that, they play Uriah Hall in the main event instead of Strickland, right? Or they'll play Stolze, Jones, Garcia, Strickland, and some, and Kamaka or something like that, some type of lineup like that. I just think we're going to see so many of those types of lineups that the edge is not playing those types of lineups. Get much more unique this way because we just very condensed ownership and a unique situation. It's like, how do we pass up Stolze at 7,000? Because you're going to ask that if you play MMA. How do you pass it? It's hard to not have him in a lineup. Let's understand, if you're playing large field GPPs, you're aiming for first place and you want to win as uniquely as possible. Maybe not completely unique, but under 10, under 5. So by not playing Stolze, you're just like, your duplication factor goes out the window. And if you're playing Stolze and using most of your salary, you're gonna be you're gonna end up playing, even if you do Stolze and then play a bunch of these mid-rangers and you go like Koski, Lawrence, this guy Bagdazarian, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Like that's even going to be on, because look, we have 36% for Koski, 28% for Lawrence, 27%. Like, in order to get a lineup that is more unique, like, you're going to have to fade most of these guys up here, which means you're going to be leaving like $1,500 in salary, which is fine. Any of these guys, it's not like basketball, where it's like, oh, well, the price leads to the amount of time that they're on the court. It's like, no, the salaries don't even, once the fight starts, the salaries don't matter. Because the points scored, like Jones could come out, first round victory, Rowe, first round victory. Yaya, first round victory. Stolze, first round victory. I mean, you could have a lineup where the optimal lineup, there's no fighter more than 7,700, right? 6 underdogs win and score well. And they all have 100 plus points. And there you go. There's the winning lineup, leaving 3,000 on the table. It could happen. It happens a little less often because obviously the fighters that are higher priced are more favored in the fights. But at these prices, I mean, 9,600, 9,500, typically we don't see odds that are just 72 and 76%. This is like typically 9,600 is where we see like Amanda Nunes when she's like a 90% favorite, right? You see something like that. So there's much more closer fights. I mean, when you have the $6,600 fighter that still has a 31% chance of winning, 19% chance of inside the distance, 11% chance of in the first round, and still only going to be 8% owned. Seems to be so many more ways to make unique lineups this week simply by fading Stolze or playing him and leaving 1,500 on the table. Because if you don't play Stolze, you probably could spend 49.8 or something like that and still have a unique lineup. You don't play Stolze, you play Gooden instead for direct leverage. And then you still play, you leave money on the table and you're still playing like a Witt. You play Witt against all the Barberena lineups, right? So you're going to see a lot of Stolze and Barberena together, and you're going to play the complete opposite. You're going to play Gooden. You're going to play Gooden and Witt. And then you play Strickland in that lineup. Or you don't even have to do that. Maybe you play Hall and Hall wins, right? He's 11% sure. Well, I mean, he's going to be owned. Hall's going to be owned because he's a main event fighter, 5 rounds. So there's much more upside in a decision. But you could make that lineup. You could make a lineup that leaves 2,000 on the table that has as much upside and much more uniqueness on this slate. So I'm probably building 100 to 150 lineups tomorrow. I'll probably have less than 20% Stolze. I'll probably have less than 20% Barberino, less than 20% Garcia. And leaving a ton of money on the table and playing a lot of the mid-range and a lot of these other underdogs. Understand that the most probable outcome is that Stolze wins, Barberena scores well, Garcia scores well, and that lineup has the highest median, the highest possible whatever. But it's going to be duplicated like 172 times. So I don't want to play those lineups. That's why I'm not making calls. Stolze most likely wins. It's just a matter of how much he scores. Right? 66% chance of winning, but if he scores 75 points, is he going to be necessary? Possibly. Quite likely not. So just because he's priced, 2,000 too cheap for his winning percentage, even his inside the distance, like 250, like in comparison to some of these other, like Koski, 160, Lawrence, 220, Bagdasarian, 210. Like it's not, even if he was priced at 9,000, he wouldn't even be that great of a player. He wouldn't be as owned as these other fighters, right? But when your aim is you're trying to get 100 plus points out of every fighter on average, I think if he's going to be 64% owned, I mean, you could just take a look at the colors. He's going to be the most over. He's going to be the most over-owned fighter at 64%. At 50, but let's say he was 50%, he's still He's still one of the most over-owned fighters, right? I don't know what the owner doesn't mean that he plays 0 of them. I mean, he could. That's risky, but of course, if Stolze puts up 120 points at 64% ownership, you're dead with that. You're dead without him. A 7K fighter putting up that much, unless guys below him put up more, that's going to be a weird slate. Where a guy at 7,000 puts up 120 and doesn't appear in the top lineup. Most likely he does at that point. But that's the edge. That's why I won the show. I teased it early. So what's the edge in MMA this week? Sometimes there isn't. Like last week. Sometimes you look and you're like, there's some fighters that are slightly over-owned, slightly under-owned. Constructions that are, you're like, okay. Like there's nothing big. It's like you're going to try to get unique, but there's nothing that completely stands out. But to me, these type of situations don't come up that often in MMA. where the favorite backs out, and the underdog is a heavy under. We've seen it before that like I know like an $8,200, $8,000 fight, right? Like the favorite backs out. It's like, okay, so now the underdog ends up being the $8,000 fighter ends up being minus 140 or minus 150. And it's like, okay, that's good line value, but he's still an $8,000 fighter. We rarely see a $7,000 fighter that has the same money line as a $9,000 fighter. So how to handle that? Some people just, I got to jam Stolze in 100% of lineups. I mean, he can do that, but just if you're going to do that, then don't play the same constructions as everyone. Then now you're leaving 1,000 on the table. I hope you understand it. Okay. Andrew Garcia asks, no, Results DB doesn't keep the MMA. I don't believe so, right? We don't have MMA. No, we don't. Results DB is only for NFL, MLB, NBA, and golf. The major sports. But you could download the CSV. It's, I mean, come on. Play the large field GPP on DraftKings and just download the CSV. Once it locks, there's no late swap, right? So once it locks at 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, just download the CSV. There you go. Are you going to be? Is it going to be nice and pretty like this? Can you do? I mean, you can make it in Excel. Just download it and then sort by username. You can make a separate spreadsheet and have it add it all up and give you these numbers if you wanted to. You could. It's not complicated. But Andrew Garcia also asked, do you play qualifiers? No. I play qualifiers once in a blue moon when they have overlay. When they have a massive overlay. Typically towards the end, they have a multi-qualifier, like the top 4 get whatever. But typically, no. To me, I find qualifiers to be negative EV. And do you recommend playing those? So you play satellites. Qualifiers are for like live finals. Satellites are for other GPPs. I never play satellites. I play satellites when they overlay. Understand that when you play satellites, the satellite is typically raked also. So you'll be paying 15% rake in the satellite and then paying 15% rake in the contest that the ticket is for. So to me, you only play satellites when they overlay. 5 minutes before lock, and you see, it's a 31-person satellite and it's 15 full, right, or something like that. But if you could afford, I mean, should you be playing contests that your bankroll doesn't afford you to play anyway? No. So why would you be playing satellites into those contests anyway? That's my perspective. And Leon Beal, what do you think about a Baltimore-Detroit stack? I think it's sure, why not? We don't even have starting lineups. It's a 15-game slate. It's a day before the trade deadline. Who knows what's going to happen? That's why I didn't bother. But today's slate, who knows? Look at your projections. What does it say? It's not complicated. You know where you can get projections? Sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. Use the Plate IQ projection. Sign up for the bat projections, Cardies, right? We don't have that much baseball. We got 2 months left, right? All you need is the numbers. It does all the work for you. Then you just build plus EV lineups. Turns out yesterday, plus EV lineups were A's lineups and not Tigers lineups. But if you never played UFC before, it's not complicated. Trust me. I started playing during COVID, right? Because the Dana White on the Fight Island or whatever. It's like there wasn't many sports going on. It's very binary. I mean, you're picking 6 fighters, and you don't play fighters against each other because only one of them could win. Yeah, occasionally you get draws and neither of them win. Get no contest. There's weird stuff that happens in MMA. But understand it's very high variance. I take advantage of that. The biggest edge in MMA is what I'm showing you here. Fighters that have a perception of that they're going to win more often are way over-owned. And ones that seem like they have no shot are way under-owned. And the variance of a single MMA fight could be any. I mean, one person makes a slight mistake, and that could be over. And it could be a favored fighter. In the past year of playing MMA DFS, I've seen minus 800 favorites lose in 30 seconds. Like, you're right. I mean, in 30 seconds. I've seen guys that had inside the distance odds of like 700, which is awful, finish a guy in 2 minutes, right? Because one punch, someone makes a mistake, knocks good hook on the chin, and the guy goes down and then gets pummeled and TKO, and there you go. Just on a mistake. One punch can knock anyone out. So people just overestimate their, like, oh, this guy's definitely going to beat that guy. Like, definitely? I mean, look at these odds. These odds, there's no definitely. The highest win probability fighter on the slate is 76%. Right? That's a little over 3/4. So 25% of the time, the other guy wins. I mean, like, that isn't like, oh, he has no chance, right? But people treat it like that. So that's why when I play lineups, you'll see crazy lineups that I play. Well, you played that guy, you played this guy, you played this. And you thought that. I didn't think anything. All I'm doing is playing the numbers. I know that Adeshev is more of a stand-up striker, so he doesn't score well in decisions because he doesn't really grapple. And for DK scoring, I can't ignore the fact that his inside the distance is twice his ownership. Maybe he gets a first-round victory. I mean, look, his odds of winning in the first round is 13%, and he's only going to be 11% of it. Right? So it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, you get paid more than you should be. I mean, that's what it is. So does it mean, do I like Adeshev? No. And typically this happens because the ownership gets condensed over like the fighters that have more, finishing potential. Yeah, they have more, but doesn't mean it's going to happen. We had a fight last week. Allen versus Soriano was the fight that by far out of any fight between both sides was not going to go to a decision. It was a fight most likely to end inside the distance. And you know what it did? It went to a decision. And neither fighter scored well. And it killed like 80+% of people's lineups because most people played either one or the other. It turns out they both busted. Oh my God, I can't believe it. No, well, obviously there's right? Compare the two inside the distance lines, it's not even close to 80% owned between the two of them, which means they're over-owned. The one guy that lost was like 51% owned and lost. You can just kill lineups. They're way over-owned. I played half of what most people played of him. And yes, sometimes the chalk gets there and you get crushed. I can tell you that. There's plenty of times where it's like I'm telling you that the edge is not playing a lineup like two of these 9K guys, Stolze, right, and one of the mid-range guys, and like don't play those lineups. And those lineups could be the winners, right? Stolze puts up 100, Barbarita puts up 120, Strickland goes to a decision, well, maybe not strike, fourth round KO, puts up 110, and you look at the lineup and you go, oh, it's Chalk City. Chalk. Yeah, okay. 68-way tie for first, 800-way tie for second. I mean, like, it could be, sure, it could be that. Why not? And you put in, you don't have any of those lineups, and you're sitting there, with a 90% loss on the day. Yeah, that could happen. Absolutely. But if you're too afraid of the chalk hitting, then you shouldn't be playing DFS. You should be playing every day for the chalk not hitting. You're going to lose most of the time, but when you win, you're going to win way more than you should. That's the GPP way. If you don't want to play like that, play double ups. Okay. So that was Casual Friday. Gets a little silent during the MMA talk. I want to give you the edge. I know someone. I did MMA because it's the DFS pregame show. It's not the MLB pregame show. It's the DFS. It's whatever is going on in DFS. I know the last time, or maybe the time before, I did some MMA, whatever, and someone watching from RotoGrinders won 100,000. It's like, oh no, and I think maybe didn't even play MMA before. Like I saw what you were talking about, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to play, and then they won 100,000. They won first uniquely for 100,000. Maybe that'll happen again. Hopefully it's me. I'll root for myself first, obviously. I'll root for you guys next, after that. But I mean, I always come first, right? So, yeah. So there you go. And then we have trading deadline. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows who's going to be? Any of these people can be traded at any time. What could happen? Ooh, what's going to happen? Who else is the Yankees and the Dodgers going to get, right? That's what ends up happening. The Red Sox got Schwarber, right? We saw that last night. Story's going somewhere. We know that. Are you playing him today? I don't know. I don't even know if you're playing him today anyway. Story. Well, who are they playing? Who are the Rockies playing? Where are the Rockies? Oh, they're playing at the Padres against Ryan Weathers. I mean, that 4,600, pretty cheap. I don't know. Probably it's 50-50 that he's even in the lineup. Okay. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Thummy thumbs. Give me those thummy thumbs. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Grinders Live coming up later today to discuss the MLB slate. That's at 5:30 Eastern. Then at 6:30 for premium members. It's crunch time. So sign up for RotoGrinders Premium to get that. And I'll be back. I'll be back on Monday, as I am, answering your DFS strategy questions, reviewing slates, going over whatever it is you want to go over. That's what I'll do. Mondays through Fridays, not at 11 a.m. Eastern for the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.